So let's talk conservation. There's a couple of different ways that it can happen. It can happen at the population level and the species level. At the population level, there's something you can do called the small population approach. And what this is doing is studying what processes are going to cause these tiny fragmented populations to finally become extinct. So this is going to involve something called the extinction vortex. And if I get my little pad and pen. Let me see if I can pull that up. Sorry. What's going to happen is, clear that. Oops, I need that. Okay. So let's say that this is our population, right? And so up here, it's very diverse and very large, and now it's getting smaller and smaller. There's going to be a point called the extinction vortex. And below this point is where the population has no chance of coming back. So that's going to be genetic drift, inbreeding, all that stuff is going to be happening. So below the extinction vortex, we have to do some sort of intervention. That's kind of what we're talking about with that. So the big question is, how small is too small? Well, obviously there isn't some, whoops, there isn't some magic number. It depends on if they're K or R selected, how they reproduce, how long they live, all of that kind of stuff. So one thing that you can calculate if you know enough about the species is something called the MVP, which is the minimum viable population size. So that's the minimum size just above that extinction vortex where the population can replenish itself if we do the right measures. So we don't have to actually intervene, but we can actually just do some conservation stuff to help them survive. Now, the way you can calculate it is with what's called the PVA, population viability analysis. And so you put all these different factors into this program, and it'll actually tell you, like, this population has a 20% chance of living. What do you do with that? You take that to the government and you say, okay, this is where our counts are. This is the PVA. This is the MVP. We need to enact some sort of legislature to protect the species or something like that. So another thing that you'll have to factor into this program is going to be the effective population size. And so what that's doing is actually looking at the number of females and the number of males that are able to breed. So that would be, judged by size usually. And so you put that in there and that will actually help to calculate their chances of survival. Because if they're all male, obviously they have a 0% chance of surviving, right? So that's kind of how you can do that. Now, there's also that previous one, the small population approach, is something you would do if you came upon a population and you were like, oh my God, this is all that's left. The declining population approach is going to be something that is going to be looking at stuff well above that minimum viable population size. So this is looking at what is actually happening that is making this population actually just decline. So there are going to be steps in this. Obviously, the first thing is getting that baseline data. So you need to know, are they declining or are they in a much smaller range than they used to be? Then you can't just say, okay, conserve them. You need to know their history. You need to know what are their requirements. Maybe those are some requirements that aren't being met. So then going along with that, you determine the possible causes of the decline. Then you can list predictions for each hypothesis, so, maybe it's because of acid rain, maybe it's because of climate change or whatever. Then you can design an experiment to determine what the main cause is. So, you're going to look at these different parameters. Has temperature changed over time and has that affected them, right? So that's kind of how you can do that. And then finally, you can apply the results of that analysis to management. So that's basically what I did with my research is I actually figured out that some species were in decline. And so they're trying to use that to actually enact marine protected areas and those types of things. Okay, so in the next video, we'll talk about what we can actually do to help this.